bill.
Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, if I had been part of the Select Committee process, of course, which hasn't happened on this bill, there are some questions that I would have wanted to tease out as part of that process. And I want to turn particularly to Clause 17 of Part 2, which is the criteria for the determination that a person is a returning prisoner. One of the things that I would have wanted to tease out through the Select Committee process is the comparability of laws and sanctions in different jurisdictions to ensure that we capture through this clause all of the people that we hope to capture. So it seems to me that the principle that we're trying to achieve here is to ensure that somebody who is coming back to New Zealand having been sentenced offshore is treated in New Zealand in a similar way to the way they would be treated had they been sentenced for that offence here in New Zealand. And the wording of this clause leaves a little bit of ambiguity that I'd like to seek some reassurance from the Minister on. So part 1 of this, or subclause 1, says the Commissioner must determine that a person is a returning prisoner if the Commissioner is satisfied that the person A has been convicted in an overseas jurisdiction of an offence for conduct that constitutes an imprisonable offence in New Zealand. So the first part of that suggests to me that if someone has been sentenced offshore for something that isn't imprisonable in New Zealand, they wouldn't therefore be covered. Now, other jurisdictions have things that are illegal that in New Zealand are not illegal. So if somebody had been sentenced offshore and returning to New Zealand, that wasn't an illegal activity, they wouldn't therefore be covered. And I understand from the Minister's brief contribution yesterday, my understanding of what she contributed in the debate yesterday was that that therefore meant that they would not be covered. And the Minister used the example of some jurisdictions having imprisonable offences for criticism of the monarchy, for example. And if somebody did that offshore and was imprisoned for that, came home to New Zealand, they wouldn't be covered because in New Zealand that's not an imprisonable offence. But when we get to clause B, it says, has in respect of that conviction been sentenced to a term of imprisonment of more than 1 year or 2 or more terms of imprisonment that cumulatively amount to more than 1 year. Now, the reason that I'm interested in this is different jurisdictions will obviously treat things more severely or more leniently than they may be treated in New Zealand. So the question that I have, if someone had served a prison sentence overseas, for example, that might have been significantly less than what they would have served in New Zealand, and therefore doesn't fall within this criteria, does that not mean, therefore, that we're not capturing all of the people that we are attempting to capture through this legislation? So had they been sentenced offshore to, say, 6 months imprisonment for something that in New Zealand would have given them a minimum prison sentence of, say, 2 years, why would they not be captured by this? And that's one of the questions that I'd like to get some reassurance from the Minister on. So, because it seems to me that clause A suggests that that what we're trying to do is achieve consistency with New Zealand law, yet clause B doesn't have any such additional requirement in terms of the length of the sentence. So I'd like to get some further clarification and advice from the Minister on that. The second part is clause C, is returning or has returned to New Zealand within 6 months after his or her release from custody during or at the end of the sentence. And again, there's some areas of ambiguity that I would quite appreciate some clarification from the Minister on, and I welcome the new chair to his significant elevation and congratulate him on that. But some clarity from the Minister just regarding the returning to New Zealand within 6 months. Now, the reason that I'm interested in this is if somebody is sentenced for child sex offences in an overseas jurisdiction, they complete their sentence and are released into the community and have been at large within the community for more than 6 months. Why would they not therefore be covered by this clause, and are they going to be covered by other provisions? What would those other provisions be? Those are the sorts of questions that, had this bill been to a select committee, those are the sorts of questions that I think we would have clearer answers to than the ones that we have had so far to date from the Minister. So those are the brief questions that I have for the Minister at this point in the debate. I have further as we go along, but I understand, I've seen the Minister taking notes, so I'm hoping that we'll get some answers to some of those before the debate proceeds.
Porter Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your indulgence,